Welcome to the sixth episode on machine learning for beginners. And tonight we have with us Ganesh Iyer, who is an AI researcher and who has a great experience working in research and industries, and who has worked on various platforms as a software development engineer and also an AI researcher. And once again, repeating myself, we are just creating this webinars to help some of the newbies in this domain of machine learning to get started and know how the industry looks like and how to get started with this domain. So I'll just quickly introduce as of now whosoever is on the screen. I am Jay. I'm a research assistant at Arizona State University, and I'm pursuing my grad studies in artificial intelligence with a focus on data science. Ashutosh?
Hi, I am Ashutosh. I am a graduate research assistant at University of Waterloo. I work in natural language processing and deep learning. And yeah, I'm in my first year at my master's. Yeah.
Awesome. Ganesh, would you like to tell us something about your background and your current work?
Yeah, hi, my name is Ganesh Iyer. I'm a software engineer at MGH and BWH Center for Clinical Data Science. So my role is to build a platform for leveraging artificial intelligence in radiology. So the Center for Clinical Data Science is based out of Harvard Medical School, two hospitals, Mass General Hospital and Brigham Hospital. And their goal is to use AI and machine learning in their clinical workflows. So we're starting off with radiology and building on to like other modalities and stuff. My background is in computer science and machine learning. I did my computer science engineering from NIT Surat, where I did some machine learning projects. After that, I graduated from Dhirubhai Ambani Institute, where we all went. I did my grad school there and worked at MD University and Georgia Tech in the informatics department for 2.5 years, primarily in the space of data visualization and digital pathology.
Awesome. That seems great. All right. What was your first outburst into the professional career, like into the domain of AI specifically? So, what was the first outlook you had in terms of industry or research?
Uh, so my first time looking at AI was when I was 12 or 13. I used to play Age of Empires. I don't know if any of you guys
Yes,
played.
Rise of Nations as Age of
So I was
Empires.
a game modder. Oh, great. Okay. So I don't know. Do you know game modders? Yeah,
Yes,
so
yes.
there's people who modify games. I was pretty heavily involved in that community. I actually led Age of Modding, which was the biggest modding community at that time. So we used to take, so we used to like look into building game mods, and that was the first time when I looked at how like different civilizations played Age of Empires, and it was just like a text file with a bunch of if-else conditions, which is not really AI, but that was what AI was at that time. So that was my first impression of it, and didn't seem too excited by that. But in my third year of undergrad at NIT Surat, I started taking Andrew Ng's Coursera course. I think that was the first time it was offered, the
Yes.
machine learning course. I don't know if you guys have taken it, but if you're not,
Yeah, we all have.
probably the best way to get started with it. So I took that, and that change totally blew my mind. Just looking at because I had read about like symbolic AI and things like that, but that never really caught my interest. But taking that course really opened my mind to machine learning and artificial intelligence. Then my final year, we were all supposed to do this project to graduate college. So we decided I teamed up with a bunch of other people to build a facial expression recognition system. Um, so we used kernel methods, which were state of the art at that time, not that popular now, and used some image processing, feature engineering methods to like extract features and send it to the machine learning to the classifiers. So that was very exciting. We had a pretty good time doing that project. So I decided after I was getting close to graduation, I had a couple of job offers, but I didn't feel like doing the job. I wanted to do grad school, but going to America was too expensive, so I didn't want to do that. So I heard about the machine intelligence program at the ISCT. They have an MTech specialization in that. So I was like, most of my education has been through Coursera or online courses, so I'll just sign up for this and keep taking courses. So I got into grad school and yeah, I mean, did a few more courses, specialized in AI. Um, the one course that I really liked was information retrieval that Vasanthi Majumdar used to offer. I think it's still offers it. And I worked at their lab, at the Iyer lab for a year. Um, and that gave me a great background into information retrieval, NLP, and things like that. I specifically worked in bio NLP. Um, so our goal was to use leverage ontologies and that are
Right.
already existing in the medical domain to leverage them to improve our accuracy in search engines. So we took part in this search engine competition called Play eHealth, which is a pretty good information retrieval contest. More like kind of like Kaggle, but more academic. So at the end of it, you also get a paper, which is nice. So we actually won that in terms of the map score. So our team had the best map score, and I continued that for my master's thesis. So
Oh,
those were
great.
my introductory that college and like as how I got started into ML and AI.
Right, right. And so, like, you have a good background working as an AI researcher in medicinal background. So, what does your current routine look like? What are the kind of duties as an AI researcher you work in the domain of medical, and what are the expectations out of you as a researcher or as a software engineer in general?
Yeah, so right now at the center, I'm not a researcher anymore. I work as primarily as a software engineer. So we're building production-ready, industry-grade platform for deploying machine learning algorithms in the clinic. So we're partnering with NVIDIA and a lot of other companies to build these platforms. So my day-to-day job right now involves um, basically building the orchestration system, right? So right from when the model is delivered to us, ideally in the form of a container, how to build services around it, how to wrap it around services, how to train it across a cluster of machines, how to gather the results, how to feed images into these algorithms. All that pipelining, all that inferencing work is taken care by our team. We also build tools for building the learning platform itself. So these images that we use are highly specialized, right? These are, I don't know if you've heard of DICOM images.
No.
It's a specialized format in radiology. It's
Okay.
very complicated, like it. So we have a specialized video for that, and then doing annotations, how to and the difference between us and other players is that if you're annotating, say for a self-driving car company, you can hire a bunch of people from Amazon Mechanical Turk for like just low cost people
Right.
to like keep drawing things to you. But for us, our annotators are clinicians and radiologists who get paid like 300,000 a year. So we need to make sure that their time is super precious, and we need to make the annotation experience as pleasant as possible too. So that is another challenge at the annotation side and the labeling side of things that we tackle. The third is once you've got the data, you've trained it, you've deployed the model, how do you visualize these results in terms of to the clinicians who are in the reading room. So radiologists are very used to a certain kind of a workflow, so they don't like a massive change from that. So we need to integrate these machine learning algorithms into their existing workflow. So tie up with a lot of legacy systems that are there in the hospitals and visualize the data there. But I can talk in general about the AI research that I've done in the past, in both in digital pathology and radiology and data visualization and stuff.
All right. Right. Yes. Yes. And so one of the common confusions that most of the newbies have is like, according to your experience at workspace and throughout in the domain of research, what is the clear distinction between an ML engineer does, what AI engineer does, or what data science engineer does? And is there a clear distinction, or is it something too much fuzzy or too much muddy about in the industry?
I feel AI engineer and ML engineer are pretty much the same
The
role.
same.
I don't think a lot of companies are doing symbolic AI out there. So if you're an AI engineer, chances are you will be working on a ML engineer. I feel, yeah, but there's still, even just in terms of like being a data scientist versus an ML engineer versus a data engineer versus a software backend engineer, there's still a huge spectrum there as well. And so I would say most organizations look for T-shaped players. So ideally, if you're a data scientist, you have a depth in the data science domain. That is, you're good at training models, testing, and evaluating. But you also have a good enough background in say data engineering, machine learning engineering, and the backend engineering. There is how do you deploy this to at scale, and how do you get the data from different data sources, build these pipelines to get data from multiple sources, and backend engineering is like building microservices and deploying them at scale. So most organizations would, for the ML engineer role, they would want a T in like sort of a spectrum between backend engineer and a data scientist. So somewhere in the middle. It's vague and depends on organization to organization. I would say different companies have a different culture. A lot of companies actually call their data scientists. I mean, a lot of data scientists, whereas for some companies, a lot of it is the backend engineering work stuff.
Right. So is it something like, if I were to generalize, is it something like if you are an AI engineer, you are supposed to at least know the basic stuff what a software development engineer works with the platform, and in addition to that, maybe apply your AI knowledge? Is it something, or is it something like as an add-on to what software engineer does, or maybe something different?
Yeah, I mean, so I wouldn't call it. So every, as I said, I mentioned that we share employee, even a software engineer would work with a product manager and things like that. So they are most inclined towards that side, where they're doing software plus product management. Whereas a data engineer would do data science plus software engineering. So there's always a spectrum from like right from product management to your other technical roles.
Right.
So
Right.
I mean, I agree with that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Ashok.
Right. Yeah, I actually have one question. Since you have worked in the industry and also you are in the clinical data science space, and along with the recent advancements in efficient models in deep learning, how much do the industry and clinical data science space trust in those deep learning models to deploy them for actual real use? I mean, since we look at from research perspective or academia perspective, we are kind of looking forward to a number following game where we just want to do leaderboard chasing, right? But how is that leaderboard chasing actually helpful, or is there any trust associated with that for actual deployments of products?
So yeah, that's a very good question. So we have a bunch of clinicians who are constantly in the loop and evaluating our models constantly. So our goal in the first couple of months at least, is going to be to like get feedback real time from the clinicians. In terms of the confidence from whatever I've talked to clinicians there, they seem very happy with the results so far. The goal of our algorithms is to augment their workflow and not to replace them, right? So anything that is making them get decisions faster is obviously welcome. So what our algorithms do them is like guide them to specific regions in the images, which the algorithm thinks which would help the radiologist or the clinician to make the diagnosis. So those are things that we're using the AI for, and the clinicians seem to be fairly receptive for that. So yeah.
Oh, great. So even in clinical data science space, deep learning is here. It seems
very
like.
much so.
Yeah. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, there are a lot of other companies that are doing a great job as well, like GE, Siemens, and NVIDIA. They're all building their models. They're all trying to deploy it. There are a lot of startups like Path.ai, which does
Right.
digital pathology. So there are a lot of players in this space right now.
That's good.
Right. And My next question would be like you took your studies from undergrad to masters and then maybe to further studies. So what according to you would be, and as you mentioned, like you started off your machine learning and AI journey via courses online and pretty much doing all by yourself. So it was a kind of a self-paced journey. So
Yeah.
what according to you, like what should be an ideal approach if somebody wants to get into the domain of AI? Is it something they can being an undergrad student, is it sufficient, or research is something that should be is highly recommended if they want to get into the domain of AI research in general?
Uh, I mean, if you want to get into AI research, then yes, you need a research background. But if your goal is to work as a data scientist or a machine learning engineer in a company, then I wouldn't say you need AI research, like do research projects mandatorily, but like you need to have a good understanding of machine learning. You need to have worked on projects. So research projects is a great way to get started because as college students, not a lot of other opportunities are there for you to do projects. But if you get other opportunities to do machine learning projects, then that's great too. Um, but yeah, other than that, I think unless you're planning to pursue research, only then the research aspect of it comes handy. Otherwise, just doing projects. Doing courses, of course, helps, and applying these knowledge to specific projects or doing part has that time.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so one of the related questions would be like you must have applied to multiple places when you wanted to get a job in this domain, and you also work as a software engineer. So like you must have applied to many other places where the requirements as a AI or data science engineer is. So what is the common pipeline for recruiting looks like? I mean, there is a plenty of help available for what are the expectation as a software development normal
Right.
infrastructure engineer,
Yeah.
but there's not a lot of things that go on to ask for if I go on internet and ask what's the common pipeline for recruiting looks like for an AI or machine learning engineer, there's not much help available. They maybe do the lateral hiring process. So as a fresher just out of the university, how should I prepare myself to get myself job landed in these domains, working in these domains? Maybe may I let it be a research or any software development normal infrastructure engineer job.
Right. Yeah, so that's another great question. For me, my personal journey was I did Google Summer of Code, so with the same organization that I landed my first job with, so they offered me a position right out of college, and then for applying for clinical data science again, I had someone refer me, and that helped. So I feel the best way to get in is through references. So if you're just there, I mean, there are two ways of approaching. Like, first is you're getting your step in the company, right? So you can either cold apply to send cold emails to like hundreds of companies, and that will have a success ratio of like 3%, even unless you're from MIT. Or you could leverage your network and get like 10, 20 people to vouch for you, and then get your resume through the door. So most of the, I mean, 9 out of 10 times if someone's referring you, then your resume will go through, given that you have the right background. So once you're in, then it's up to you, your preparation, and how you handle the interview process to get in the position. So I mean, if so, and going taking a step back is to actually have the right background to have that resume, right? So you need to make sure you're doing projects where you're leveraging artificial intelligence, machine learning, you're taking the right coursework, which I'm guessing people who are looking to get into AI and machine learning are doing. So then this is the three-step process that you do: build your background, then get references or do cold emails, and then uh, go through the interview process. The interview process, again, to break it down, like for software engineering, it's pretty well defined. You go
Technical
through cracking
rounds.
the coding interview,
Yes.
and it's pretty straightforward. You solve a few whiteboard problems and
Right.
get in. For AI, data scientist, machine learning, I haven't come across a fairly standardized interviewing process. It depends from company to company. A lot of companies give a take-home assignment to like build a machine learning model, which is again,
Right.
like people have all kinds of opinions about that, but that seems to be a common theme across different companies. Another is you still need most companies have one whiteboarding interview process. So again, that's just standard cracking the coding interview or leadcode.com. It just solve like 30, 40 problems and then you are ready to like solve it on the whiteboard. So these two are the more technical interviews. The others are some companies, depending on how you where what spectrum of the AI machine learning spectrum you're
Requirements.
applying, they also expect data visualization skills. So that's another good to have. So if you're applying for explainability or just like uh, database heavy jobs, then they might expect you to like come up with a dashboard or something. I mean, I agree with you that there's no like formal structure as of now, which is very much present in the software engineering interviews, but there's still common themes that you could use to prepare yourself.
Right. Right.
Right.
And so like being a person, like you have straddled in equal both amounts of industries, like you have been a part of the industry working as a direct intern, and you have also been into the research. I mean, you have done your graduate study and then you came to US.
Yeah.
So what difference did you feel when you joined as a professional software development engineer? Is there something lacking in the academia, or is it like some things you might have learned? For example, one I know is soft skills. I mean, there's a lot of other things that goes on beyond being just an engineer and doing your regular stuff. So like one of the things like most of the speakers in the previous videos talked about is like working on scale, something that they didn't do that in
Right.
the academia, but they find a lot of struggle doing that in the initial years of their job. What something new, like, because you work in AI and healthcare, which is one of the like two most demanding things as of now. So what is one thing that you noticed was totally different, or something you didn't expect into the industry, and you hope you might have learned in your university academia?
Yeah, that's wonderful. So just to come to the point of scale in academia, I actually the largest scale deployments that I've had were in academia. So people who are not familiar with digital pathology, like one image is like 5 gigabytes in size. So if you're having a collection of like 200,000 images, which is a small collection, just that
Right.
in itself is a pretty massive collection. And just a simple segmentation algorithm returns about 20 million objects per image. So you get like 20 million into 200,000 into 10 objects just for a very small collection. So I mean, like you can work with a massive scale even in academia. In terms of things that I find different in academia and industry is number one is the teamwork. In academia, I felt I was working alone. A lot of the time, it was just a lonely journey of me trying to be a DevOps engineer, a data scientist, a software engineer, a front end engineer, and a data janitor who happens to find like doing data cleaning. Whereas in industry, you have a very nice team, and teamwork is very important, and you're like part of a team that has a common goal, and people sort of help each other out, which is great. The other thing is in industry things are very organized. So you have like quarterly goals, weekly goals, and you have daily stand up. So everything is like a very goal oriented, and you try to get those goals done. Whereas academia is kind of fuzzy about it. Another thing is the specification of things. Like in industry, you need to have a strict contract of deliverables, right? Whereas academia is like, oh, even if we don't do it, we'll at least have a paper from it. So,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
but the good things about academia is the first thing that I mentioned, where you end up being a DevOps engineer, a data janitor, a data scientist. So you get to wear all these hats. So you have a huge breadth of knowledge that you can use. The other thing is you get a lot of creative freedom. Like I could choose to work on whatever I want, whereas now it's restricted to things that are we are pursuing in our current quarter and so on. So those are like contrasting options for both academia and industry.
Right. Right. And also, like you mentioned, one of the things on your profile that you did Google Summer of Code, and because I know you personally, like I know you also mentored as a GSOC in the community, right? And the Google Summer of Code. So definitely that was a value addition to your profile, and it might have also helped you backing up your profile as like you have worked as on a real project. What other things you think that you think made you stand out getting a job as a in the domain of AI as a software engineer, or what are the things people should do? So like working on projects, how should they approach working on projects, and is that something recruiters look for, or is it something research, publications, names, or is it something internships, relevant internships in other named industries? What, according to you, like on a brief summary, like went through the whole application process, what things really make you stand out on your profile in working in this domain?
Yeah, I think you covered a lot of the important points. So
So,
internships are very important. Actually, most of the people I know who have interned in big companies end up getting a job there. So that is very easy and very low hanging fruit just to like intern in companies and you'll end up with a job there. The other is publications. So with publications, I feel quality is more important than quantity. A lot of people have a lot of crappy publications which no one really cares about. But if you have one or two really good publications, in NIPS or something, that would be like fantastic. But even in like good AI or machine learning conferences, that would be great. Taking winning competitions is another great way. I mean, taking part and like participating in it is great. Sorry, I thought I lost you for a second.
yes,
So
yes.
taking part and in competition is great for like learning stuff. But if you think like coming 172 in a casual competition is gonna help on your resume, then no. So unless you're in the top 10 in competition, then that's gonna stand out in your resume. So that hackathon winning all that hackathon stuff, that's a good way to do it. And taking good projects where you can talk about. So make sure that you have a full understanding of the projects that you've done on your resume. So that's another good way to sort of distinguish yourself. Um, I guess I personally also look at like things that you could point me to. So if you have a system that is deployed and is being used by thousands of people, even thousands of people, that's a good enough. That gives me a good enough benchmark to sort of look at a candidate. Also, like your GitHub profile. I don't think a lot of people do it, but some people do look at it. I personally look at it them. So your GitHub profile, if I see good libraries listed in your GitHub profile that you've authored, that's again a good way to stand out.
Right.
And blogs and publications. Even starting a podcast, I think, is a great way to stand out. So good job on that.
On my way.
Well, I have one more question that do you believe that most of the ML jobs are preferred for PhD candidates or students, or even in the internships are more for the likes who are in the third year or the second year of their PhDs, and less for the graduating masters or the masters internships or the masters looking for internships?
I do see a lot of people with PhDs being data scientists, but that is not always the case. I've also know people who've just done Fast.ai courses and landed up being
Okay.
a data scientist. There are also people with masters who did software engineering and then pivoted towards data science roles. Yeah. So I mean, although it I personally don't think you need it, but I've seen it quite prevalent in the industry. So it probably improves your chances, but I would say it's a mandatory requirement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, great.
And one of my favorite questions is always to ask is like how much mathematics that you have learned in your academia you seem to be applying on a daily basis. So like, is it something like you always work on predefined pipelines already defined by your company channels, or is it something you are allowed to innovate within your workspace? And are you allowed like again I would reframe the question rather is like how much do you apply what you learned in your college or universities to innovate something and bring a change? At least the question is much more relevant because you're working in AI and healthcare. That's a huge space over there. So yeah.
So I would say when I was in memory, that was much more research oriented outlook. So at there, I had a lot more creative freedom to like use more of the some of the math. I didn't, to be fair, I didn't use a lot of the mathematics that I learned back in grad school. I took a course called Introduction to Machine Learning on edX, which it's a very mathematical course. Which I don't know if you've gone into VC dimensions, and which is like a theoretical bound on how well machine learning algorithms perform. A dumb way to would be to compare it to big O in computer science. Like
Yes.
but I mean, I never used a lot of those things. They seemed really interesting back in the time when I was reading into them. I spent quite a long time going through the theory of like VC dimension and some of the other things that the course talked about. But I feel I don't use that a lot. So
Right. So like again, like is it something very monotonous pipeline that you have to follow doing something, or again like I would just again ask the question like is it something like you are innovating on a regular basis, or just something as a infrastructure thing you work on?
So currently, my role, I primarily work on like how do we deploy these algorithms at scale. So I'm not really in the learning or the mathematical side of it. I'm more into like link tools like Kubernetes, Nomad, and the hashing stack to like deploy these learning algorithms at scale. But back when I did do a lot of machine learning and training, a lot of it was I would try intentionally try to like formalize the pipeline and just make sure that we ran through that. But the first time that we were actually building that pipeline, we did go through a lot of iterations of trying out different. But it was more of like trying out different things than actually using the map.
Right.
Yeah.
And what are some of the best ways you would suggest to get remaining updated to the current trend in the domain? There is a lot of research being done, like of course following conferences and publications is one. What are some of the blogs like you might have done in your undergrad and maybe your masters, like following some places? For example, I personally do on Kaggle. I just at least look through the competitions. So what are some of the resources that you would suggest the newbies to follow to get themselves updated to the current trend and demand in the industry?
Yeah, so I think conferences are a great way of finding out what is cutting edge right now. I also look at like papers coming out of Google. I personally like the system side of things more. So I think Uber is doing a great job as well. They just open sourced Michelangelo, which is their machine learning platform, and that I looked at that and that was really impressive. Those are the things like a lot of these companies are also releasing their papers. I also listen to a lot of podcasts, so that is one way I try to keep updated with what's going on. So for data science and machine learning, I listen to Thinking Machines and Data Skeptic. For software engineering, I listen to Software Engineering Daily, which is a wonderful podcast. Software Engineering Radio is another podcast that I listen to. For more operational back-end systems level stuff, I listen to this podcast called the Changelog. So that starts giving me a spectrum of like machine learning to the operational side of things. In terms of blogs, I don't. I used to be an avid follower of like blogs, but I don't have a list right now on top of my head.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I guess yeah. That's Ashutosh. Do you have any questions apart from
No,
that?
I think I think I'm done too. He's pretty much answered all my questions already. Yeah.
All right. So like just one last question. Like what would be a short tip or some kind of do's and don'ts according to your experience you would like to summarize for any of the aspiring computer science engineer, be it a normal software engineer to leading like some aspirational machine learning or data science engineer? What is in general advice you would like to give, like look ahead for them?
Oh, either be the LeBron James of your field or be like in the top 10% of two things. So either be the best person in like one field or be at least in the top 10% in two or three things, two or three fields. Like so tonight, like if you want data science and software engineering, if you're in the top 10%, then that's another way to succeed. So I think those two really those two themes I see common across various massively successful people that I know. So I feel capitalism rewards rare and valuable skills. So that is two ways to stand. Those two ways are useful ways to stand out. So
Definitely. Definitely. And because you also like follow many of the trends, what according to you is something new that's coming out? For example, say, is it something like conversational AI bots, or what according to you is the like new trend you industry might be shifting to? I know it can be a totally biased opinion, but what
yeah.
according to you would be something drifting?
I feel something that I've been personally interested in is explainability of deep learning algorithms, because we do a lot of work with clinicians, and something that I feel would be very useful in the hospitals or just to something I've been thinking about. Like it's not premium. I think like a lot of us been starting to be done in this field, but that is something I feel would be really nice and something that has a lot of potential. Another thing is like building tools for like making annotation, labeling, and things like that easier. So leveraging machine learning AI there would be
Yes.
Yeah, wait. This brings me to one more question. That you mentioned that you work with actually data annotation too. So, is it explicitly based on the experts you hire, or is it also automated? Because in many fields you have it automated, but can you trust this for medical domain or not? Or there can be biases right over here that for some that yes you can trust, but for some you can't take that risk of automating those annotations.
Right. So right now we are more like the annotations that we work for are all clinically are all verified and are done by clinicians.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Great.
Right. Yeah.
But this is just like across the board. I feel this has a lot of potential. Yeah, but maybe not so much in the healthcare realm, but in some other fields. Yeah.
Right.
Awesome. Okay, yeah, that's all from this episode as of now. And again, thanks a lot for joining on this call on a Sunday evening. I hope we didn't ruin it for you. And
No, it was wonderful to talk to you all, and good luck with the future.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Thanks.
good luck with the weather tomorrow for you.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Okay, good night.
Good night.